And my God, I got so emotionally attached. Shit happens. I don't know, like, huh? What? Why? That makes no sense. Miss Smith can fucking kick rocks? Well, hello. Welcome back to my channel. Jashana here to talk about some friggin' books that I have read recently. I don't think I have any DNFs to talk about today. Amazing. Yeah, in the entire month of May, I only had 2 DNFs. Oh, one of them is in this group. Okay, just kidding. Also, sidebar, I got new hair. Well, it's my hair, but I got my hair done. And I'm loving it. I'm so excited. Feels so summery, much lighter. Getting into the books though. For the last recent wrap up that I did kind of go a little bit out of order intentionally because I had reread like The Hunger Games and I just wanted to talk about those all together. And all of these books I'm talking about today are others from May. So this is like May part 2. And if you watched my reading vlog, my recent reading vlog, you will have already seen me talk about this book. This is the 3rd and final book in this series, I always switch it around, The Nightingale and the Falcon, not The Falcon and the Nightingale. This is by Stephen Aryan. This is through Angry Robot Books. This is historical fantasy. We are following a cast of characters. And the setting is the Mongol Empire's invasion of Persia. And Stephen Aryan is Persian himself. I can't say too much about the actual plot of this one, of course, since it's the finale. But the series overall, the first book is much more historical and like military than fantasy. Towards the end of that first book is when the real fantasy elements come into play. But we set everything up in that book. We're following a few main characters who are all interwoven in various ways. They are somehow involved with this whole thing. We're following someone who is part of the Mongol Empire, one of the rulers, one of the descendants of Genghis Khan. We are following a Persian rebel, I believe, oh, now I can't remember. There's a character named Koko-chin. I'm pretty sure she's Japanese. At any rate, she is a princess, and she was captured when the Mongol Empire invaded her land and basically took her to be one of the wives of the Khan that we are following. And she's getting involved in some stuff. And we are also following one of this Khan's sons, the kind of least favorite of his children, for sure. And the TLDR here is I had such a fun time with this finale. I liked the second book more than the first book. I didn't dislike the first book. I quite enjoyed it. But then the second book, 5 stars. And then this one, 4.75 stars. Definitely a favorite of the year, for sure. A very solid finale, in my opinion, for my reading taste. And the first book had a lot more, I've said this so many times, but had a lot more of the like military strategy, and we saw quite a few battles. Not like a shit ton, it wasn't the majority of the book, but slightly more than is like my taste necessarily. But Stephen Aryan does them very well. They're very cinematic to me. And we had a little bit of that in this towards the end. And my God, I got so emotionally attached to these random like side characters that we were getting some POVs from during this one battle scene. And we were just kind of using them to like pop around on the battlefield and see what was going on. And oh my God, I got so hyped. I got emotional. I got choked up. And it felt like, again, very cinematic. And it just reminded me of watching the Battle of the Bastards episode from Game of Thrones. Just this chaotic battlefield of like which way's up, which way's down, who's who, I don't know what's going on. And it was so well done. And I really like the fantasy element in this series. Again, it didn't really get introduced until the very end of the first book, but I was hooked, and we got so much more of it in the second book and in the third book. It's this group of people called the Kozan. They are humans, but who can manipulate time. They have this magical ability to essentially manipulate time, and because of this, they are very long-lived, and they meddle in human affairs. And there's like two warring factions of the Kozan, meddling in various ways, and I loved all of that. There's definitely themes of colonization, oppression, fighting back against oppressors, compromising values for the greater good, just kind of sacrifice for the greater good in general, and the importance of companionship. I absolutely recommend this. Try it out to anyone who enjoys any of the things I've talked about. I definitely have realized from reading this series, I just had never really thought about it before, but man, I love a good like rebel group trope or plot point or whatever you want to call it. I really had such a fun time like watching a rebel group like strategizing how they're going to undermine their oppressors and what they're going to do. Like it was so good, which is why it is on my new favorites shelf. Next, talking about Sweetness in the Skin by Ishi Robinson. Got this from the library. This is contemporary fiction. We are following a teenage girl. The TLDR for this one is a pretty quick read for me, and it's a coming-of-age story that I quite enjoyed. The summary that I have is coming-of-age story following Pumpkin. There's no P in it. Pumpkin. A young Jamaican girl living in Kingston with her mother, aunt, and grandmother, with big plans of moving to France with her aunt, who is more like a mother to her. Her mother is incredibly neglectful, and her grandmother has played favorites with her daughters, for sure, favoring Pumpkin's aunt, clearly, and it has caused intense animosity in the home. Aunt Sophie moves to France for work, promising to send for Pumpkin when she can, but Pumpkin knows her mother will not let her go, and she doesn't have the money to get there anyway, until she comes up with a plan to sell her baked goods to earn the money that she needs. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Again, I quite enjoyed it. The writing overall was solid. I didn't have any issues with it. It didn't strike my fancy in any particular way, though. It was just good, there, solid. I really enjoyed Pumpkin as a main character. She is definitely a very flawed human character. She's a little bit self-centered, we see, like very self-involved, self-absorbed, just worried about her own thing, which is to some degree, I think, how everyone is, right? You are the main character in your own life, hopefully. And she shows growth regarding this throughout the book, though, and I really appreciated seeing that. Miss Smith can fucking kick rocks. I fucking hate that bitch. Oh my god, it's a teacher that she has who should not be a teacher. Just the fucking worst. Oh my god, I hate her. Some of the other characters, the side characters, felt a little bit surface level. Not overly so, but a little bit. But I mean, it makes sense. We're following Pumpkin, so we get the most from her. Overall, I enjoyed the plot. I found it entertaining and compelling. I read through it very quickly. I did have some issues with the pacing at the end. It felt really rushed, and I kind of got like whiplash from it. Just like, wait, what? What happened? Okay, I guess. Definitely themes of personal identity, cultural identity, personal agency, family trauma, specifically cycles of trauma. We definitely delve into that here. And cycles of poverty and trying to break out of that. What does that mean, though? There's a lot of conversation about what it means for the people in the neighborhood you come from, in the environment you come from, if you do want to get out of that environment and, you know, improve your status. What does that mean and how people can feel about it? There's a lot of discussion about that. Some content warnings to be aware of, just some moderate ones. Nothing was crazy, but there are some like heavier things that we see and that Pumpkin has to deal with. There's addiction. We see a character who clearly has an addiction issue and alcoholism. There's some bullying, some school bullying for sure. Child abuse, again, nothing like crazy intense, but there's, you know, some hitting of children. Racial slurs and racism in general, and colorism as well. And there's like, I would call it a minor thing for pedophilia. There's nothing on page of anything happening to anyone, and there isn't even anything, I don't recall there being anything that does actually even happen to anyone off page, but there's like an almost and a heavy implication that there's a person in Pumpkin's life who probably is a PDF or could be, or we're not sure, but at any rate, just a heads up on that. So yeah, I enjoyed this. Like I said, 4 stars, good time. Really love this cover, it's so pretty. Then from the library, from Libby, I got the audiobook of I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. I have already recorded an individual book review for this. Again, it probably is up by now by the time this video is going up. So if you're interested in this one and you want to hear more thoughts, or if you've read it and you want to hear more of my thoughts, check that out. This is very much dystopian, sci-fi, literary. The TLDR on this is it was not what I was expecting. And in theory, it should have been an incredibly frustrating book for me, but it ended up being very thought-provoking and really engaging despite nothing really happening, actually. Kinda, but if you've read it, you know what I mean. The summary: deep underground, 39 women are kept in isolation in a cage. Above ground, a world awaits. Has it been abandoned? Devastated by a virus? Watched over by guards, the women have no memory of how they got there, no notion of time, and only vague recollections of their lives before. But as the burn of electric light merges day into night and numberless years pass, a young girl, the 40th prisoner, sits alone and outcast in the corner. Soon she will show herself to be the key to the others' escape and survival in the strange world that awaits them above ground. The woman who will never know men. This one apparently, I think, has been popular recently, maybe on Book Talk or Bookstagram. Maybe not, I don't know. I don't remember how I heard about it. I think it was from on Storygraph, doing like, clicking for, you know, recommendations like this book or similar books compared to this on one of the literary fictions I read in recent months. And then I saw something of someone mentioning it being popular. Could be wrong though. I don't fucking know. I am not on TikTok and I'm barely on Instagram. And it's like stream of consciousness. Listening on audio, I think, probably was the move for me. I mean, I liked the audiobook, but I think if I had read it physically or like on ebook, like seeing the words and it just being this stream of consciousness, it might have like thrown me off. I don't know. Quite enjoyed it. Probably a favorite of the year. The writing is very compelling and thought-provoking. I couldn't put it down. It's very philosophical in nature. And I've said so many times, audiobooks tend to take me a really long time to get through, unless they're, you know, a novella or something, but any just standard length novel is gonna take me a long time. And to be fair, this book isn't super long. Yeah, I guess it is short. It's like 200 pages, but I like blew through the audiobook. And for the characters, I mean, the main character that we're following she's only ever referred to as the child. She's the 40th prisoner, the young girl that is with the women. And it was just so fascinating. I found her so fascinating. Kind of this question of what would a human being be and who would a human being become if they didn't grow up in any kind of civilization or society or even a free community. I can't really say too much about the plot. Again, there's not really a plot, but kind of, I don't know. It's part of her experience that she talks about is nothing has ever happened to me. She says that a couple times, like, I'm someone who nothing has ever happened to, because they literally are just in this cage all day, every day with a trough to like relieve themselves. They get 2 meals a day and the lights dim a little bit when they're supposed to sleep, but they're on this like weird clock. They don't know what's up, what's down. And they're not allowed to touch each other, and they don't have entertainment. They're just kicking it for like years and years and years and years and years. But it was still engaging. There are some huge mysteries. There's huge questions being raised. And to me, I guess the point of the book wasn't the why of it all. Like, why is this happening? Why did this happen? Why do the guards do this? Why do the guards do that? Why do we get 2 meals a day? Why aren't we just killed? Like, what is the point of all of this? There are those questions, but the point of the book is more the value in asking questions, the value of asking why, the value of having that curiosity and desire for knowledge for the sake of knowledge. There's several points where the child is asking questions to some of the women, and they're like, what's the point in telling you? Like, why tell you what it's like to be with a man? You're never gonna be with a man. You're gonna die in here like the rest of us. Why tell you what a sunset looks like? You're never gonna see it. Things like that. And she's like, I just wanna know, just because. Can't you just tell me? And I really enjoyed all of that thematic work. And just like the value of thinking at all, the value of thought, and how intrinsically like human that is. Obviously, content warning for confinement and alluded to kidnapping, because like how else did they get there? They don't really remember how they got there, but they remember like flashes of like violence and lights and noises and maybe bombs going off, maybe fire. They don't really know, but it's clear that they were like taken from their lives. Moderate warning for just general death as well as suicide. There's like 2 suicide attempts mentioned, I think, and how the guards like thwarted it because they're not allowed to harm themselves either. And then there's one that does happen and we do like kind of see on page, so heads up. And then also minor one for cancer. I don't think it's ever named on page. It might be. There's one woman who is like a nurse, and as some of the women are like getting older, they're all getting a similar ailment, and it's like some kind of abdominal lower body cancer pretty clearly. And it might have been, she might have said that, but I don't remember. Yeah, again, probably a favorite of the year, I would think. We'll see after I read more. Next, I read this copy that I got from the publisher. Thank you so much, Angry Robot Books, of the Ellyrian Code, the Treaty of Ariendor by B.F. Peterson. This one is coming out June 24th. Again, this video might be out after that. I'm not sure. I'm recording it well before then. The summary with this one is essentially we're following 4 students, initiates at this elite university in an epic fantasy world. Eshtem University has long stood as a pillar of equal opportunity, a place that any youth of Ellyrian can apply to become part of the Edrei, or Edrei, E-D-R-E-I, an elite order of dragon-riding, magic-wielding peacekeepers. But as evidence of corruption surfaces within the order, the students will have to re-examine their future and the roles they wish to play as an Edrei, if they aren't expelled first. I will say, TLDR here, a lot of the world building didn't make too much sense to me. There were several points I was like, wait, what? This kind of sounds kind of silly. But the plot was compelling, and I am intrigued for the sequel. And I did read the prequel as well, which had pretty different vibes for sure. Not necessarily like the writing was different, but just the tone of it. And I think we still had teenage characters in that one. But in this one, they're like at this university, and it just feels more young adult-ish. The comp titles for this are Fourth Wing meets Atlas 6. I DNF'd Fourth Wing, and I've never picked up Atlas 6, but I think with Fourth Wing, the comparison is simply that it's like a dragon riding elite university that's really hard to get into and to stay in type of thing. Because from what I read of Fourth Wing, which was like 3 chapters, the tone didn't feel like how this feels. I didn't like the tone of Fourth Wing, if you can't tell. I would say the ideal reader for this is someone who is more plot-driven, who enjoys high fantasy and can get behind a university setting, and who doesn't care if there's romance or not. There's really not in this. There's a character who clearly kind of has a crush on another character, and that they kind of have a crush back, and like there's something there, but it's not like a main point at all. And we're following 4 main characters, so it's not like there's one pairing that we're waiting to happen or something. And the writing, I would say the writing is solid. Nothing like fancy, nothing that really, like no authorial voice stuff that really struck me. stood out, but well written and with a good narrative flow overall. The characters, I liked them. I liked our main characters we were following. They were unique and had a different voice. They all had a different voice. But I did find them to be a little bit surface level, superficial. I don't feel like I knew them all super well. The plot and the pacing is where I had some issues. I really like the concept of the plot overall and the world, particularly where we left off in the end of this, some foreshadowing and what we set up for future installments. I will be checking out the sequel for sure. I'm genuinely a little excited to see where the story goes. But there were some like kind of nonsensical world building things that just stuck in my craw. And I was telling Roger about them as I was reading it, and he was just kind of laughing at me like, the weirdest things bother you. Just some stuff with how the university operates, really. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give like any kind of spoilers or indications for things. And it's probably stuff that won't bother most people. One thing I will say is they have parchment paper in this world, but the students all use slates and chalk to take notes for their classes. And I was just like, what? Why? That makes no sense. And then they're like shuffling them around to each other like, oh, I missed that lecture. Can you give me the notes or whatever? And I'm like, the chalk would be rubbing off, would it not? Like, and how heavy are these? You're lugging multiple slates for multiple classes around? Like, this makes no sense. This makes no sense whatsoever. Especially when you have parchment. I don't know, even if it's like more expensive, you'd think the university would give it to them. I don't know, maybe not, whatever. Stuff like that, like minor details, whatever. There was also one thing though, there's like, just again, stuff with the world building. This country, Ellyrian, they like, basically, it's a known thing that a lot of their historical records are like redacted. They like erase things from the history books. And it's seen as this like honorable thing because like say I'm of this grand house. There's all these different houses, right? And say I'm of this like noble house and I do something untoward and scandalous or treasonous even. If the rest of the family, the rest of the house is all like, yeah, we condemn Jashana, what she did, we don't agree with. We are not a fan, she's excommunicated from the family. Then they can like have it removed from the history books and it's seen as like honorable since the family is like shunning this person now. So it's like, oh, we don't need them in the history books because like we're just gonna pretend they don't exist. Okay, so that's the deal. So this one girl wants to know like the truth of something, and there is like this one order, this one like group of people who keep accurate historical texts. It's like this elite order of people who are like protecting the real truth. And it's seen as like this scandalous thing. It's seen as like they're heretics and they're corrupt. Oh my God. And I was just like, what? How would you convince people that that is corrupt? Huh? And the character who is like looking for the truth, she literally is like, oh, I want to know the truth because this seems corrupt. That like, it seems like the Adre are hiding the truth of this. So I could go to this group of people, they'll have the true history books, but I don't know, is that bad because they're corrupt and they're heretics? And I was just like, what? These things, this is not computing. So just a few things like that. But like I said, the larger plot points and the larger like world that we set up and like where it seems to be going is very intriguing to me. I'm fascinated. I just felt like even though I was really like, oh man, I'm kind of excited for the sequel now, because of the various other like little issues I had, I just couldn't like give it a super high rating. And because I didn't get super connected to the characters, but I definitely still would recommend if any of these kind of buzzwords sound appealing to you, then check it out. I enjoyed it. Next, I read Wedding People by Alison. Espach, I still don't fucking know. This is tagged on Storygraph as being literary. I disagree. I posted on my community tab recently like what people's impression is of literary because of not just this one, there was another one too that I read recently, but this one especially, I read it, I went into it thinking it was like literary fiction, and then I read it and I'm like, this doesn't feel like literary to me. And then I'm like, well, what does that mean? And what do people think it means? And like, what does it actually mean? And I might do like a quick video talking about that. I don't know. But this to me, there's also tags of contemporary and fiction. This is contemporary fiction to me. A little like rom-com-ish. So anyway, all that to say, I disagree with this being called literary. The summary here, Phoebe's life has not gone according to plan, and she is severely depressed as well as suicidal. So she books a way too expensive hotel room for a room at a fancy inn to go and take her life after one last night of indulgence. That's her plan. She arrives and realizes that the entire inn is occupied by wedding party guests, and the bride also realizes this and is horrified that Phoebe's presence will ruin her wedding, and shenanigans ensue. And spoiler alert, she very quickly decides not to take her life. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a book. It's at like the very beginning. The TLDR for me with this book is, it was dark for sure, but like humorous, very funny at the same time, and a very compelling page turner of a book. But it just wasn't, it's like the messaging, it's just not like messaging that I felt like I needed. It's not like for me. And I also do not suffer with depression in the slightest. So despite having immense empathy for people who do, I obviously can't truly like understand the mindset of it all. So I think I wasn't like the ideal reader for this book. Not that you like have to be depressed to enjoy it, but I don't know. It's just so not how my mind works, how this main character's mind works. But I still had a good time with it overall for sure. But that's why I didn't rate it higher than I did. I ended up giving it 3.75 stars. So still pretty high. And like I said, I read it in like a day and a half. I feel like the ideal reader, obviously, I think if you do have mental health issues, particularly depression, and if you have ever had suicidal ideation or suicidal thoughts or whatever, then there's a lot that you could relate to here for sure. And just in general, maybe like someone who's younger and hasn't had like enough life experiences of life just throwing wrenches in their plans, and someone who still tends to like get really stuck on their plans, like this was the plan, what do I do now, and like holding on to those plans like really rigidly and kind of freaking out if those plans are thwarted at all by life circumstances, and maybe people who still find themselves like thinking that they need to chase this idea of like perfect happiness. Then life will be good and complete if I get to this place and that place. And now I'm moving the goalpost all the time. If you're that type of person, if you have that kind of mentality, or you find yourself still gravitating toward that type of mentality, I think there's a lot in this book that you will really relate to and find meaningful and maybe even helpful. I don't know. But yeah, following this main character being in her head with her depressive thoughts and just lingering on these sad things that have happened in her life, my brain just so does not function that way. And my brain doesn't have to function exactly the same way as a character, but when it's like the point of the book and it's like all she's thinking about for a lot of the book is just my misery about this and about that, and woe is me about this and about that. And I understand that it's like a mental health thing and she can't help it. I'm not saying she was annoying or whatever, or like she should have just smiled and stopped being sad and get over it. But it's hard for me to be in that headspace with her for so long. It's just like feeling like life stops when you experience something really difficult. And like if you don't achieve XYZ like big life moment, you know, marriage, kids, etc. And like if you don't, then your whole life is a failure or something. Like I cannot relate. I cannot relate at all. I've never really had that mindset, I guess. I've always just kind of been like, fucking roll with the punches. And maybe that's because from a pretty young age, I had to. I don't know, like going off on my own at 18 and like being broke as a joke and having to work myself almost full time through college and being on food stamps for a while and just all these like financial struggles, and then getting married kind of young and divorced promptly after, moving across the country and like abusive relationships and just all this shit. Like life, I just feel like it's like always throwing shit at me, and I'm just like, that's life. That's life. It's just always gonna throw some shit at you. And not in like a super cynical, pessimistic way. Like, that's just life. That is life. It is a roller coaster of ups and fucking downs. And just because you get some ups, it's not like, oh, wait, you should always be like looking around the corner waiting for something bad, but just like, yeah, I mean, at some point something else is going to happen that's going to be frustrating or bad or tragic or traumatic or whatever. Like, that's the nature of life. I don't know. So yeah, for me, like a story that is working through all of this, following a character who is working through, what do I do about my marriage falling apart? I don't know what to do with myself now. And like, woe is me. It's all despair. I'm like, I don't need this message. For me, it was just frustrating. And once again, we have some characters who like just kind of floating through life, letting things happen to them. Not taking action in your own life. Like, have some personal agency, my God. And in this case, like, you're just not. Like, you have the freedom and willpower to do so. You're just not doing it. Not having conversations that need to be had. Not confronting things head on. Like, it just, again, makes no sense to me. Like, watching characters having, like, their marriage fall apart because they just aren't fucking talking to each other. Like, and they're just drifting apart and like, oh, I just don't know. I'm like, does not compute. Does not compute. There was one character named Natalie, who has like a little outburst, very temporarily at one point, about the people around her, like not bothering to decide who they are and what they want in life. She's just like, I just don't, what are you talking about? And I was like, yes, girl, I feel you. Like, more of this, please. All that said, though, the character interactions were so entertaining. The dialogue and everything, it was so entertaining. I blew through this book because I did want to see where the chips were going to fall with everything. The dynamic between Phoebe, our main character, and Lila, the bride, was fascinating and hilarious. And they were very compelling characters, for sure. There's just like a section kind of towards the beginning where Phoebe is doing a lot of reminiscing and like we're seeing the backstory of how she got here, where with her marriage in particular, that I was just like, oh, shut up. Which is maybe mean of me, but whatever. And the plot is quite silly and unrealistic. That's why I say I liken it to kind of like a dark humor rom-com. Because that's what made it fun for me. It was like so silly. Like, this would never happen in real life. But like, that's why it's fun, you know? It's fun to watch in a story to entertain us. And to have some like touching human moments, you know? And there were a few memorable quotes that I wrote down here. Let me make sure that it's not spoilery. Her feet began to ache, and she wonders, for the first time since she left home, if she should have brought a pair of sensible shoes. She has so many lined up in her closet, being navy, doing nothing. That just cracked me up. The shoes being navy, doing nothing, it just cracked me up. And then, Uncle Jim is not okay. He's on the floor, yelling something about his ankle. And also the floor, which is a terrible floor, he says, not to mention total bullshit. The men in Burgundy gather around him and start apologizing to him about the floor, which, yes, they agree, is the worst floor, even though Phoebe can see it's some kind of Italian marble. Like, that whole sequence, I was just like, what the fuck? This is so silly. So silly. I love it. And this is kind of the messaging that, like, personally just wasn't something I needed / didn't already believe. But where a character says, I think we talk about happiness all wrong, as if it's this fixed state we're going to reach. Like, we'll just be able to live there forever. I was like, yeah, exactly. What did you think it was? But that's mean of me. I'm certain, actually, that, like, my whole thing with, like, yeah, what did you think? Like, I can think that way because I don't have the mental health stuff weighing things down in my brain and, like, confusing things. Quite enjoyed, would recommend. It is in high demand at the library still. My God. It took me like a month and a half to get it. That's all I'm going to talk about today. I've talked enough. Let me know if you have read any of these or if you are thinking about reading any of these. As always, thank you so much for your time. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.